Welcome to On the Issues with ABC News senior White House correspondent Martha Raddatz and the Brookings experts for a dialogue on policy ideas. Research Director Jeremy Shapiro reports that there's new energy in Afghanistan, and returning refugees are optimistic about the future.
I know you're just back from Afghanistan, so you got a real look from the ground. Is it different than what we hear about in Washington?
Yeah, it's very different. The contrast is quite strange. In Washington, in the last couple of years, there's been a growing pessimism, I think, about the mission in Afghanistan, and you see in a number of reports coming out of think tanks and things that the Afghanistan mission is on the brink of failure. It's a word that's often used in association with Afghanistan these days in Washington. The mood could not be more different on the ground. It's the soldiers there, both in NATO and American soldiers, are very optimistic despite the rising tide of violence. This is quite strange at first blush. The sort of normal association you want to make is that, gee, if the violence is going up, if suicide bombs are going off in Kabul and five-star hotels are being attacked, that the war must be getting worse. But the view from the ground is that, which is from an army which has taken on very much the tenets of counterinsurgency, is that the important metric, the important barometer of how well the war is going is the viewpoint of the population and the developments in the governance and development sectors. And they see an increasing capacity of the Afghan government, an increasing capacity of the Afghan security services, an increasing attachment of the Afghan people to their government, increasing rejection of the insurgency. And in that context, the violence, while it's still a massive problem, is actually an expression of the desperation of the insurgents.
Well, that's really interesting because I was going to say I heard that same kind of optimism there, and generally soldiers are optimistic when they're on the ground, and they have to be, but you're saying it's because they are really looking at this in a different way and have learned the lessons of counterinsurgency. It's not that they're being delusional or hopeful or we have to win this together.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that soldiers on the ground have a tendency towards optimism, especially in the U.S. military, which has an extraordinary sort of can-do attitude toward any problem. And it's been noted that this type of attitude that I saw in Afghanistan last week is the type of thing that you very often used to hear in Iraq in, say, 2004, 2005, when people would say, well, it's all going very well, the trends are good, don't pay too much attention to the exploding car behind the curtain.
That's what I thought. I thought it was very much like Iraq during those years, and I thought, are we headed for something worse?
I think there is that possibility, and it's important not to take the military claims on face value, in particular for that reason. And you know, from the outside, even from a visit like mine, where you're sort of in a military bubble, it's very, very difficult to assess those arguments. I think there are some important distinctions between Iraq and Afghanistan, which make the argument somewhat more credible in Afghanistan than it was in Iraq. First of all, they do have very extensive population surveys, which show a very different view of the population than we ever saw in Iraq. In Afghanistan, in the first place, the population is very supportive of the NATO and American mission. In the second place, there aren't the type of sectarian divides. Although there are some sectarian divides, there isn't the type of potential for massive sectarian violence, which is really what caused the violence to spin out of control in Iraq. And in the third place, you have some really rather extraordinary development statistics going on in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is an immensely poor country. It's the fourth poorest country in the world. Puts it on sort of African standards. But it's been growing like gangbusters for the last couple of years. And we see, in particular, refugees returning to Afghanistan, when at this period in Iraq we saw refugees leaving in droves.
I just want very quickly 2 points. bringing in the Marines, I know one of the points they made to me is we're building on success. That's why we're bringing the Marines. I found that one hard to swallow.
Yeah, I would say that that's taking it a little bit too far. The trickiest part of Afghanistan right now, the most difficult part, is what they call Regional Command South. It's the southern part of the country around Kandahar and Helmand.
Which was actually my second question, too, because that goes to NATO and really how they're performing. So blend those two together if you can.
What we're talking about here is some deeply risk-taking activities, things which both American and European militaries are pretty averse to at this point. If you look at the American dispositions in the East, they've sent outposts, what they call combat outposts, into very obscure, very isolated territories, groups of 30 to 40 men who spend their lives out there interacting with the population and are at great risk and take casualties. One of the generals told me that his nightmare is that one of those outposts will be overrun and 30 or 40 American soldiers will be killed or captured in one evening. But they believe that that's important because you need not only to get out among the population, you need not only to clear the insurgents, but you also have to provide a sense of long-term protection and security.
Thanks very much, Jeremy.